Hey guys, and welcome to my Charge Dash Raider build. I like to call this the Red Map Destroyer because you just zoom through red maps and no problem whatsoever. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you get the hang of it, it feels really good. So let's jump into kind of what you can expect from the build. The build has great defenses, has great offensive capabilities. The thing that only lacks is maybe ability to kill bosses. It's not the best bosser. That being said, I have killed every pinnacle boss with it. Never done Ubers with it, but it is definitely doable, especially once you start to scale your gear up. One of the biggest benefits of it is really, really budget friendly. This is a great league start build. The only thing you really need is the Voidforge to get things going. Once you have your Voidforge, everything starts to click. Things just start melting. You'll blow through white maps, no problem, without really anything else. Once you can move on from that, you can start scaling better and better. And most of the things we're looking for are very, very cheap. We'll start first with itemization. Really, the only 100% necessary item here is the Voidforge. That's really what allows Charge Dash to do so much damage. Charge Dash inherently is a pretty weak ability, but when we're able to get so much damage with this Voidforge, we end up making it worthwhile. When we're to really maximize the damage of the Voidforge, we're actually just getting as much fat physical damage to attacks that we can. I achieved this with a replica lore weave, abyssus, steel rings, and getting it on my amulet and on my gloves. So we're ending up with a ton of physical damage to attacks that basically gets multiplied by 4 with the Voidforge and turned into a random element. The replica Voidforge is the replica lore weave is a little bit weird of an item, but it gives us insane offensive potential. We're getting the plus to all stats, we're getting physical damage to attacks, huge global crit chance multiplier, and then a lot of life, elemental damage right there, 48%. The downside obviously is max resist getting knocked down, but because of the fact that we have spell suppression and a good amount of evasion, we really don't feel that until we're running into like some very specific instances. And honestly, the plus max mana, the plus maximum energy shield, and the increased rarity feels really good, especially with Arch Nemesis. Getting a little bit of splash rarity can feel really good. The Abyssus is a little bit risky as well, as it increases physical damage taken, but we actually have pretty good defenses here, especially against physical damage, so I don't really feel the downside of it too much, and the melee multiplier is absolutely insane on top of pretty much the most physical damage to attacks you can get in the game. In terms of the steel rings, I burned through hundreds of deafening contempts, essence of contempts. If you're not familiar, basically right here, the essence of contempt, I throw these on rings. I use abrasive catalyst to get those to the quality that gives attack modifiers. I throw that on my amulet as well, and then I'm able to craft some really good rings. This ring in particular, Kraken Knuckle, is ridiculous. This thing is so nice. You're really going to be looking for, obviously, life and then increased elemental damage with attacks and some resist. Because we're rocking this, these two uniques here, we're not getting any resist on our body armor or our helmet. So resists are pretty important on jewelry and on boots and gloves. Really, gloves and boots, you can kind of do whatever. I ended up just kind of using contempts to get these gloves, which I'm pretty happy with. Chaos resist, it's really nice to get it where you can. Pretty high evasion, and that's another thing to talk about actually, is we want to get as much evasion as we can on our gloves and boots, because we're not actually getting any on our body armor and helmet, and as a raider, you kind of get bonus from the evasion. And when we're rocking Grace, we're still able to get ourselves up to right here, 72% chance to evade attacks despite having no evasion on 2 massive pieces. And then we're looking at 75% physical damage reduction. So we have really good evasion and armor, which really helps the defenses of this. Life is a little bit lower. We're rocking under 5,000 right now, and that's just because of the tree. We're not really getting a ton of life, and I'll have the path of building for this. But one of the nice things is with crystal skin, we're able to get 100% avoidance on all elementals here, so we don't have to worry about ailments whatsoever. Don't have to worry about that on your flasks or any of that. But yeah, so huge crit multiplier. Don't worry about the damage that shows up in game. The tooltip damage is absolute nonsense. Our damage is absolutely massive. One thing you're going to be looking for is really int, because the replica lore weave, we're going to need pretty high int to equip it. probably going to have to get at least one of these nodes on the tree unless you're getting a lot from a piece of jewelry somewhere. I didn't, so yeah. I ended up getting one of these. I've had to at times get two. But yeah, so we're obviously mana efficiency for Grace and Determination. We're rocking down here. There is some wiggle room there. You can end up picking up. You can kind of go up here if you want and maybe get it there. I don't 100% recommend it because it's a lot of points to get up there, and really we're using a lot of points. If you want to really maximize the DPS on this, the Cluster Jewel is probably the way to go. There is that Cluster Jewel that every ailment increases elemental damage taken, and that ends up being a huge multiplier. I would probably grab the Cluster Jewel here, but I'm not rocking that. I've never really been able to get them to work for this build just because we need so many points, and I also like Alira a lot. I like the resist because resists are a little bit hard to get. And then, so we're squeezing in precision. For auras, we're squeezing in precision, determination, grace, and defiance banner. Most of our mana is occupied, but we never really run into any issues with it because of the fact that we get a lot of flat from our lore weave, and I have some even on my belt, so a good amount of mana there. And in terms of anything else gear-wise, you know, belt resists elemental damage attacks. The gearing is pretty straightforward. Like I said, for the tree, probably just end up looking at the path of building. But in terms of the route that I take while leveling up, I kind of just go over here. If I'm going, I would recommend leveling with Spectral Helix. It is a pretty smooth leveling. You can go splitting steel until you get up to the Spectral Helix. But the reason I like to go Spectral Helix over splitting steel leveling is because I get a lot of these elemental damage nodes early, and elemental damage with splitting steel feels pretty bad. So I would recommend that. This penetration really helps. We're really getting all of our resist penetration from Avatar of the Veil here, Trinity, which is automatically just going to hit max resonance all the time because of our Voidforge. And then this right here, Forces of Nature. I have in the past run Wise Oak, but you have to get all of your resists to be exactly the same. That's pretty tricky to do. I used to do that when I was not running the Abyssus, which made it a little bit easier to kind of manipulate our resists, but because the resists are only coming from so few pieces, it's pretty hard to do, but that can be a pretty big damage up as well. All right, well, enough talking about the build. Let's see it in action. And this is just, I actually really like Delirium with this build. Delirium feels really good as you can just cruise through most of the content and just blast through to the boss, get a lot of splinters for the simulacrum, and really just the rewards that you get through it are great. And I actually like to run Ritual with it as well as to just help stack that up. So I'm also just fond of Ritual. I know it's a little stop and go for a lot of people, but I just find it a lot of fun. It's kind of something, a little exciting thing every map. But this is a pretty, actually, there's some pretty heavy mods in this map. So as you can see, health is a little bit scary, but we are running the Molten Shell, the Vol Molten Shell. So having the automatic with the damage, castable damage taken, and the manual as well for the Vol when you're really jumping into something spicy. I like to spice in Expedition as well. Expedition can be pretty fun. In my opinion, I really like to do logbooks. Although this build, it's decent for logbooks, but it can get a little tough if you try to throw on too many remnants. Your defenses are good, but not, you're not the tankiest thing in the world. So you do have to be a little bit careful when it comes to getting some of those remnants down, especially when you start getting stunned. That's when this build can start to feel a little rough. If you're getting stunned too often and you keep getting put in bad positions, it can be a little bit tough because this is kind of one of those pseudo melee builds. We're not really true melee. We're not tanky enough to be true melee. We kind of have to be like in and out of combat. I like to refer it almost as like jousting your opponents. You're kind of coming in and out, never taking too many hits at once. And because of that, we're able to, sustain pretty well through even some pretty tough encounters. But other than that, strong boxes are nice. I always just choose strong boxes, and the incursion temple as well is really nice for just getting those deliriums up. So I like to spice that in a little bit as well in terms of which master I prioritize. Although I do actually really like going syndicate early as well, because with the syndicate, we can end up getting increased quality on our Voidforge, and that's pretty huge. If you can get like a 30 quality Voidforge, it's big because that damage is just multiplied by 4, so quality is pretty huge. Other than that, just kind of zooming through. Whatever your playstyle is, it can work if you like pretty much anything that speed rewards, which is almost anything in this game. It's going to work pretty well with this build. So really just have some fun. And to show you kind of the boss killing potential, this league I haven't done a ton, but I did do the Searing Exarch and the Eater of Worlds deathless with this build, so I'm going to kind of show you those. I actually didn't really remember this fight entirely going into it. It's been a little bit since I had done it, so it kind of actually ended up messing up some mechanics here, but doesn't end up mattering because the build is fairly tanky actually. And we have the damage where this doesn't take forever, but it's still definitely not the fastest you can do for taking down a pinnacle boss. Like right there. Obviously, taking those tentacles to the face wasn't exactly the best idea, but hey, we're able to survive it. But yeah, so basically, when it comes to bossing, you're just going to be kind of jousting through the boss. You can use charge dash to dodge a lot of mechanics. That's both for bosses as well as just generally in the game playstyle. You want to hold down charge dash for the max. You want to have basically held it down until it's no longer moving, and then you release. If you can, kind of twist it around the boss so you shotgun more of the AoE. But if not, you can just use it to dodge mechanics. When you release, you're going to teleport to where it is. So basically, if you see an attack coming, all you really got to do is let go, and hopefully there's nothing where you're landing, because if there is, then maybe you're going to run into some trouble. But overall, like I said, you could dodge a lot of mechanics just by letting go. It's pretty nice. And getting the Culling Strike on our Ancestral War Chief, as well as just the obvious damage up it gives us, helps a lot. This fight in particular, the Searing Exarch, is a really nice fight for charge dash, as you can dodge most of the mechanics just by letting go of the charge dash. You do have to be a little bit careful with like the slam, make sure you get out of there, and just kind of circle strafing for the kind of salvos that come out. But for the really dangerous part, that the actual big mechanic with the rolling balls, you can kind of just charge dash over all of them if you do it properly. That in combination with dash can really just give you everything you need to survive this fight. And that's actually true for a decent amount of bosses. A lot of the slam techniques and stuff like that, you can just kind of let go of charge dash the right time. I do end up eating one there, being kind of a dummy. But for the rest of them, I just kind of charge dash over them once I stop trying to actually do it manually. But for the rest of the fight, it's pretty straightforward. This is one of the easier fights for charge dash. As long as you don't do something dumb, you really shouldn't have any real issue. Some of the fights like Maven, Shaper, and Elder are actually just a little bit more tricky just because I feel like they're a little bit more punishing. But all of the new fights are actually pretty easy for charge dash. I would say the older pinnacle bosses are a little bit harder. Cyrus is pretty easy as long as you just kind of don't do anything dumb. Not too hard of a fight for charge dash. And most of the old Crusader bosses are not too difficult, honestly. So going the Cyrus route is definitely very doable if you end up wanting to try to make this work for bossing. But I think just mapping with it, if you really want to do bossing, farm out the currency with this and then maybe end up going down that route with a different build. But that's pretty much all there is to the build. I hope you guys have some fun with it if you do try it out. If you do, please throw it in the comments. Let me know how you like it. I really hope you enjoy it, and I will be probably making a forum post at some point with some more details as well. But feel free to check that out as well. Thanks.